We're here with multi-talented, multi-genre writer Nathan Graziano, who now lives in Manchester, New Hampshire. And over the years, you've published a lot of different books, everything from a novel to longer stories, a few books of poetry, chapbooks of poetry, regular short stories, and it just seems like lately microfiction, flash fiction, shorter shorts.
Yeah, I think most of my poetry has always been narrative, and I'm not quite sure what to attribute it to. I think it's probably that my attention span has gotten far shorter, and so microfiction, flash fiction just seems to work for me. Some of it may have to do with, time, busyness in my life, and I've had a hard time sustaining longer projects lately. So
yeah, I get that. I am losing my attention span, so I embrace microfiction.
Oh, just lost mine.
And so this is your newest book, Almost Christmas, available on Amazon.com, along with many other Nathan Graziano books. And this just came out within the last couple of months?
Yeah, it came out when it was almost Christmas, actually, early December. I think the ebook was available right after Thanksgiving, and then the print came out sometime early December.
But just to be clear, this is not a collection of holiday stories?
No, you're probably not going to want Grandpa reading that, on Christmas Eve around the fire.
So a lot of these books and a lot of the stories in this book are somewhat dark.
This is far and beyond the darkest collection I've done, yeah.
Okay. And does that help purge you?
Somewhat. I don't want to say, writing is cathartic because it's so cliched. I just think that, in different spots of your life, different things manifest. And, I've been coming out of a dark place lately, and that's where, a lot of these stories were born from.
And it just can make you feel better, making other people go through that darkness with you?
Yeah, I don't like to suffer alone.
Right, it's the buddy system.
Correct.
And since you've gone through so many different genres of writing, how do you decide when you haven't written as much poetry lately, probably, or does that tend to go in streaks?
When I was younger, I used to think that poetry was something that I would work on every day, and now I write poetry when I feel like writing poetry. I am still writing poetry, and lately I've written quite a bit of it. Something like a novel, however, you really have to sustain that. A novel is not something you can just sort of pick at like a poem or even a piece of microfiction. You have to have that sort of discipline to get to the desk every day and count words, and lately it just hasn't been there. So the shorter pieces have been working for me.
So for a novel, and you've written one novel, is that right?
I've written a couple of drafts, yeah.
You need a bigger block of time, a bigger block of free time.
Absolutely.
So you teach.
Yeah, I teach high school.
And so basically the summer is when you have a bigger block of free time to write?
Yeah, but it doesn't always work that way. There's always I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a novel this summer, and then I start to write maybe a first chapter, and there's something I have to research, and then I get on Google. Yeah. And it's down the rabbit hole.
Right.
That's it. Next thing you know, I'm watching, gerbils with existential crisis videos or something like that. Yeah.
That's better than cute kitty videos.
I watch those too.
Yeah. So when you're teaching, do you still make yourself write every day?
Ideally, I'd like to. It doesn't happen every day, no.
So at least a couple of times a week then?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, even if it's bad, what you come out with, it's good to just keep the writing going.
I think most of what you put out is bad. I mean, that's just, the bad stuff never finds a page. Well, I mean, arguably, people would say all of this is bad stuff and it's found a page. But, the stuff that I consider bad, generally I don't go back to. But yeah, I do think, writing is about 80% persistence and discipline, and maybe a small little nugget of talent. But it's just getting yourself to that desk and getting words on a page.
Okay, and so I guess as far as the writer's block question, sometimes it's not, I don't have any ideas, but I've been coming out with the bad ideas that aren't useful for a long time.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I've never bought into the idea of writer's block. I think it's a convenient excuse, and you can't say you don't have ideas. We all have ideas. They're just not always good ideas. So I think you have to resign yourself to the fact that there are going to be a lot of bad ideas before there are good ones.
Okay. And I guess just for the record, I believe in writer's block because I'm there right now. I'm living in it. And,
really?
Yeah. And
I've never had it.
I mean, okay, so for me, there are some ideas that aren't even worth writing down, even if it's, with a stub of pencil on a bar napkin. It's just like not even worth writing it down. I guess it's, after you've written so much, it's there's sort of a cutoff level. It's like, okay.
Well, I understand that to some degree, because I think I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to recycle old ideas, and it feels like at some points that oh, hey, I know this. Oh, yeah, I already wrote this about 10 years ago, and it sucked then, and look, it sucks again. Surprising.
So if we come up with a different word than writer's block, I don't have it right now because I don't have any ideas. But with writer's block, for me, I mean, that's one of the ways out is you take something, or I'll take something that I had started writing a while ago, or I'll notice a character, get a sense of that character, don't know where to put that character, and then later on, when I don't have anything else to write about, I'll go back to that character that I saw in a bus station somewhere that was interesting, and now I'll try to find a home for that character.
Yeah, see, and for me, even fiction and poetry always starts with characters. So you can just take a character, and I know it's somewhat cliched, but just take a character and put him in trouble.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work out. I mean, but we all know characters. We all have these, and I think that writers, with these characters, they live in your head.
Yeah.
So you do have access to them. You just sometimes you're not listening.
So maybe that's why your books are so dark. You start with a character and you put them in trouble.
Yeah, I do.
So if you start with a character and put him in a birthday party on a happy sunny day.
Yeah, well, there's no conflict there.
Yeah, that's true.
And when there's no conflict, when there's no problem, there's no story. And I think that naturally it's sort of my predisposition to be dark.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm not I don't think I've ever seen a birthday party on a sunny day, or felt that real joy of a birthday party on a sunny day.
Because you know that there are terrorists lurking in the neighbor's
there's
yard.
Something, or the kid accessed the gun closet.
That's right.
Something's going to happen.
So I guess the other place you can go just to sort of either get yourself either ideas or motivated or in the right mood to write is to read certain writers. I mean, especially if we're working on, say, microfiction, flash fiction. Are there certain writers you go to that it's not just that you enjoy the writing, but they kind of motivate you? I want to write something like that. Are there?
I think it's sort of a fluid process, because I can't say that the writers I went to when I was 20 or 25 are necessarily the writers that I'll go to now, nor are those writers, the ones that I went to last year.
Okay.
Lately, I've been really sort of devouring page turners and plot-driven stories. Dennis Lehane has been like a big one. Gillian Flynn, I've been reading her books, and I just I think it's the fact that, and you probably experience this too with teaching. You typically have to teach this ponderous literary stuff. And so when I have time to read for me, I don't really want to think that hard about it anymore. Right. Maybe I did when I was younger, when I thought there was more for me to learn. But now I've just sort of resigned myself to the fact that that you know, stupidity is a way of life.
Yeah. And William Faulkner and Toni Morrison aren't great summer beach reading.
No. But again, you know, the books that I'm choosing aren't exactly, you know, it's not a Nicholas Sparks book, you know, where you know, the couple's going to end up together at the end. You know, they're typically, again, these plot-driven books that I want to find out what's going to happen next. But when you have writers like you know, Dennis Lehane, you know, the guy can write a sentence.
Right.
It's, you know, a lot of those beach reads are just poorly written, and you know, it's one of those things where here's my formula. I'm just going to take these characters and these different plot turns and throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
And if you read a lot of Dennis Lehane, you probably take in his writing style, whether you're aware of it or not, is like if you live in southern Texas for a few years, you're going to start to develop a slower speaking cadence and drawl and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, maybe you're still drawn to styles, you know, that you like. And I understand, like, when you teach a lot of heavier literature, then you need a break. I mean, like, what does a professional golfer do when they go on vacation? They can't really golf because it's too serious. You know?
I think they play pool.
Yeah. And so when I'm not teaching, I'm looking for funny literature, and it's hard to find.
It's really hard to find. You know, the other cool thing that I'm starting to experience now is that, you know, a lot of my friends are putting out books, and you know, I have Rebecca Shumaja is one of my good friends. She's a poet. She's putting out amazing stuff. My good friend Dan Crocker just put out a new book where he took the characters of Sesame Street, it's poetry, and they represent different mental illnesses. Like Snuffleupagus is depression.
Okay.
Which makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you know,
you can kind of see a few issues with some of those characters.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think Big Bird's manic. Maybe.
Yeah. And for you, it might be the Brady Bunch, because that used to be your go-to.
Yeah.
Setting.
I still like it.
There was this quote from another writer on, it might have been your last book, Matthew Gwinnett.
Yeah, that's another one of my friends.
It's interesting because how he describes your writing is part Charles Bukowski and part Sherry Flick. And when I read that sounded spot on.
Yeah.
And I also thought, you can't do any better than that. I mean, especially if you're writing flash fiction, shorts. I mean, Bukowski did that throughout his career before they were called micro stories.
Right.
And Sherry Flicks is really as good as you can get as far as micro stories, just really tight, get it across in 3, 4, or 5 minutes. So I guess congrats for that. That's nice.
It was pretty high accolades, you know.
And have you read much Sherry Flick?
Not a ton of her, no. No, but and you know, and I asked Matt to blurb the book, and you know, typically when you ask someone to blurb your book, they're not going to, you know, say, you know, quick, get up and purchase this piece of shit. You want to waste hours of your life? Here, pick up Almost
Although
Christmas.
Somebody might buy that just if it was because it would be an honest.
I might actually, yeah. I'd want to see what a waste of hours of my life looks like.
And so you publish a lot on in online magazines. And do you keep up to date with? I mean, there might be certain magazines that you tend to like what's coming out there, and it's so maybe instead of Dennis Lehane and famous writers, you can also kind of keep up with newbies. You know that.
Yeah, you know, I've from the beginning been an ardent advocate of the small presses. All my books have been published by small presses. I think that some of the most interesting creative work is coming from the small presses.
And it's exciting.
And it always has.
And for the online zines, it just makes it a little bit easier for new writers to get published and kind of find their niche, someplace where they their work fits in. Where
the thing is that there's so much out there. Like, there's so much to wade through.
Right.
And that's the thing now, is that you don't even need a budget, really. You just have to set up a blog and bang, I've got a magazine. Here is a Rolling Thunder Journal,
right?
Whatever they name it. So.
All right, a couple more things. You get an idea for a story, you start to write it, you write a draft. Do you share it with somebody? Do you like to get feedback?
Not initially, no.
It's got to be finished in your mind.
No, it's almost the having someone read a first draft is like getting caught masturbating. It's just humiliating. Some of the things that come out of my mind and onto a piece of paper, and until I've had a chance to filter that stuff out, I don't want anyone reading it until I've given it someone can look at this.
I'm never going to ask you about that again.
Okay.
All right, so then one more thing, at least for me, I think a new piece that I write is complete as soon as I read it in front of a crowd, either at an open mic or I don't know if you do a lot of public reading anymore.
Not as much, not nearly as much.
And did you ever enjoy that, and do you avoid it now?
I don't think I ever particularly enjoyed it. I think a lot of it really depends on the crowds that you're reading with too.
Right.
If it's a good crowd, if the crowd's into what you're doing, it can be a lot of fun. But if it's not, or it's a small crowd, or that to me is kind of drudgery. I think that ultimately a piece of writing is complete when the manuscript goes to press.
Okay.
And then even with my next bad decision, which was some of my selected poems, I went back to poems from Not So Profound and After the Honeymoon and rewrote them. Some of them I completely restructured. Some of them had line breaks when they were first published, and now they're a prose poem, or So I forgot, someone way smarter than me said something about writing's never finished, just put aside, or I usually just say Flannery O'Connor, because that's
sure,
Flannery O'Connor.
She knew a lot. She figured things out. But doesn't that also drive you crazy? I mean, and Henry James was like that. He would just keep rewriting and rewriting even after it had been taught in literature classes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm compulsive about it, which is why typically once something's published, I don't like to look at it.
Okay.
It's
so it just happened with a few of these poems.
Yeah. Well, when I went back and what I did with my next bad decision is that a lot of my poetry is somewhat confessional. Okay. And so what I tried to do to some degree was create a narrative arc from the poems that I'd written from I forgot the years. I don't know, something from like 2000 to 2012 or something like that, or I took the poems and created a story around one speaker.
Okay.
Now the speaker is not necessarily me, but shares my voice.
All right, and so maybe that explains the whole issue with reading in public, which is a great setup since you're going to be reading and we're in public. But it's a non-existent audience, so that you can picture whoever you want.
Right.
But if your writing tends to be more confessional, then it works on a more one-on-one sort of basis. And if mine is more connected to theater or something dramatic, for me a story is not really any different than a monologue.
Right.
I like to get an audience reaction to see if it worked, and then it's also I like to hear the sound of it, the rhythm, the cadence.
I will read my stuff out loud, but typically it will be to my cat or something like that. And the cat's not going to boo me.
Cats can be harsh.
They
Cats,
can hiss.
I mean, right. And
You
then
suck.
then it's time
Shut
for
up,
a new cat. Yeah. Okay. So, do you want to start off maybe reading a piece from the new book? 'Cause
Sure.
That's the one that we're most interested in pushing.
Okay.
So it's
and again, this is broken into different sections. The second section, and living in Manchester, in the last couple of years, this has gotten real. Deals with the opiate crisis. Now, can you make opiate addiction funny? I'm gonna try.
William Burroughs did some pretty funny stuff.
And in fact, there's a piece in here titled "Burroughs' Ghost." But before we get to Burroughs,
and that was darkly funny anyway with Burroughs. So.
Yeah, very dark. I'm gonna tell you about the seagull, and then I can explain my current project, which involves the seagull.
Okay.
It's Tuesday afternoon and it's raining. A downpour that's left a murky pond in the restaurant's parking lot. Toby and I are splitting pictures and trying to score a gram, texting various dealers. Fox News is muted on the television behind the bar, a silence that seems to fit as the ticker on the bottom of the screen scrolls the headlines. A short man walks in, dripping wet. He's lithe and bald with badly dyed black hair pulled into a tight, inky ponytail. He sits beside Toby and orders a Captain and Coke from Cindy, the bartender. The man stares straight into the mirror behind the bar, scowling at his own reflection. Toby jabs an elbow into my ribs and points at the guy. Caw! Caw! Toby calls like a bird. Startled, the man snaps his head to the side and stares at Toby, a hard stare, unblinking. And as soon as Cindy fixes his Captain and Coke, he snags the drink and moves to a table at the back of the bar behind a Budweiser sign. Caw! Caw! Toby calls again. What's that all about, I ask, waiting for a text. It's Jimmy Lucas, Toby says. I worked with him at the Union Leader about 10 years ago. He had more hair then and this weird obsession with Steven Seagal. The guy walked around the warehouse like he was on the set of Hard to Kill, acting all tough with his ponytail and his black hair, kicking his leg in the air and striking karate poses. I get a text from the dealer, but he's in Lawrence, picking up, and he won't be back for 2 hours. What's with the bird call, I ask. You see, Jimmy got a vanity plate, and he wanted to read Seagal, but the fucker can't spell, so the license plate ended up spelling seagull. So when he'd come into work, we'd make bird calls and yell, "It's the seagull!" The guy got so pissed, he ended up quitting. Now he works at Market Basket in the seafood section. Can you imagine that? The seagull sells fish. You can't write that, I say. And my phone buzzes. Different guy. Bingo. Hey, I can grab a gram, but I gotta meet the dude at the mobile station, 2 blocks away. And it's pouring. I don't mind getting wet, Toby said. I'll drive you. Like a ninja, the seagull approached from behind without us noticing. I'm going to the mobile for cigarettes. Jimmy, you're my hero, Toby said. Seagull, he said. Call me the seagull.
Nice.
Yeah?
Well, that does cover the spread. It's darkly funny and it's darkly dark.
Yeah.
So, do you remember how that started? Did it start with a character? Did it start with more of a situation?
Well, it started with a real situation.
Right.
Seagull was a real guy who one of my friends knew, and he walked into a bar and he told me about the license plate. I made up some of that, but he told me about the license plate, and I laughed for like an hour Just thinking about, a guy who can't spell,
Yeah.
who's obsessed with Steven Seagal.
Who probably can't spell.
Probably can't spell either. He might have a seagull license plate too. So lately, lately, I've been writing these really strange flash fiction pieces where the seagull just sort of arrives in different situations.
The same character, or just a reference to a seagull?
No, it's the seagull. The seagull arrived, but the seagull in some stories actually flies away. There's one story where the main character is at a Barnes and Noble waiting for David Lee Roth for a book signing, and the only other person in line is the seagull. So he and the seagull start talking, and then they end up going out for Mexican food, and the seagull orders the fish tacos. So I always try to tether the seagull back to something that's seagull related.
So you're in the middle of a seagull block.
Yeah, I've got about 30 pages of seagull right now.
In different stories, or
They're
different.
all different stories.
And has that ever happened before? When
No.
Okay, because maybe for about a year or so, all I could write were stories from the point of view of a caveman named Og, and I liked Og a lot, and I had fun visiting Og, and then I got worried that I could never leave Og, and that I talk Og too much,
right?
And then I couldn't come back to.
Wouldn't you just click your heels together and leave Og?
And there were no shoes in Og's time.
Oh, correct. That's problematic. Maybe click rocks together.
Right.
Get out of Og.
Og, yeah.
I
can use that.
Yeah.
So that's from Almost Christmas.
That's from Almost Christmas.
And it's probably like a fitting tone, along with most of the other stories in there.
That one's a little lighter, actually. Some of them get really, really dark.
Okay. So do you want to read another one from that book, or do you want to go to your poetry?
I'll read one more from this, and I'll just stick with the opiate section here.
Okay.
The incident with the chicken tender. The ladies' bowling team howled when a jowl-faced woman with a flat top told them a joke about a snail. They'd pushed together 3 tables at the back of the bar and were splitting multiple pitchers of beer. Toby, on the bar stool next to me, was staring at his phone and shaking his head. "No beans," he said. I looked into my beer as if something was lost in it and hiding at the bottom of the glass. I was looking forward to a bean. Dealer says he has some of the dirty stuff. Brown? H, he said, his thumbs pounding a text message to the dealer. I don't do needles. You don't have to do needles, Toby said, his eyes fixed on the phone. We can smoke it like a bean or snort it. But it's heroin. Same thing as a bean. An opiate's an opiate. If you're booting it, that's a different story. That's next level. And if you smoke or sniff it, same as a bean, he said, and picked up his beer. The sky outside the bar was iron gray, the clouds hanging low, threatening snow. The red and green Christmas lights behind the bar burned in the dimming daylight. So you in? I opened my wallet and looked at the $40 I had saved for the bean. It was $40 I didn't have. I won't overdose, right? Toby took my cash. I can't promise anything. I sipped my beer as a middle-aged woman from the bowling team, a woman with square shoulders and large hands, started to choke on a chicken finger. I stood up as if I were going to do something and play the hero, as if I were going to dislodge the chicken finger from her windpipe. Instead, I stood still, the consummate coward, waiting to see what would happen next. The woman in the chair next to the choking person took charge. With calm precision, this woman in a blue tracksuit performed the Heimlich maneuver. A thumbnail-sized wad of chewed-up chicken finger shot from the choking woman's throat and landed on the dull gray carpet by my feet. The choking woman coughed and coughed, her knees buckling as she dropped to the floor. I nodded to Toby. At that moment, I knew that half-chewed chicken tender on that dull gray carpet better than I knew myself.
Nice. It's really interesting in a couple of different ways. When you go from the dialogue just to the narrative descriptive sections, the writing just turns more poetic. But also, I've never heard or read, and I've read a lot of writers writing about addiction of different types of drug use, and a lot of it's heroin. But I've never, even with William Burroughs, I've never read a story that gets an idea of how they first get into it.
Yeah.
The first time you ever try heroin.
Well, a bean is another term for Perk 30 for Percocet. So that a lot.
Which I think a lot of people can understand.
Yeah.
Taking that and then the move. How do you move to the next level where it's going to be really hard to come back from that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of where it starts.
All right, so that's almost Christmas.
Yeah.
And do you want to finish with a poem, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Just kind of like a grand finale.
We don't have our clock, do we? Huh?
We do not.
Oh man. All right.
But writing is timeless.
Yeah.
When you get immersed in it.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, I kind of
And so what's the name of this collection?
This is My Next Bad Decision. This is the new and selected poems.
Okay, and so that came out last year. Maybe 2. Okay.
Yeah, I got.
But it's your most recent collection of poetry.
2014.
Okay.
Is that 4 years ago?
3.5 years ago.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Math isn't my strong point.
Okay.
The athleticism of gluttony. An Asian kid, built like a cigarette, mows down hot dog after hot dog, 3 bites, a machine-like rhythm. His body metabolizes those pig's asses in the white bread buns at a bionic pace, like a broken man through a shredder. At what point, I wonder, did this kid first hear his calling? A ghost's voice whispering to him from a hot dog cart. 3 bites, it called, and the boy obliged. The camera pans on his proud parents, sitting beside a sleeveless man in a mesh hat. The husband reminds his wife, by touching her hand, of the night they conceived him, moonlight swallowing the stars without trying.
Nice. It's a good one. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, no problem.
And so the newest book, Almost Christmas, the writer, Nathan Graziano. It's just as easy to find your books on Amazon as anything else. And
yeah,
that's
I've got a
collected.
website as well.
And it's
just myname.com.
NathanGraziano.com.
It is.
And you'll find books, collections of short stories and collections of poetry and even a novel. Nathan Graziano, thanks for coming to Writers on the Storm.
My pleasure.
And thanks for watching. See you next time.